Welcome to the Celestial Saga channel. Why does human biology raise so many questions for intergalactic students? Today we will find out what shocked them the most. Miss Thompson had been dreading this particular lesson. She knew that eventually, after she had exhausted all the cultural aspects of humanity, their vehicles, clothing, and all the little details, someone was bound to ask about biology. Just the day before, one of the more irritating students had brought it up at the end of the lesson, and the whole class had joined in. To be honest, Miss Thompson was somewhat of an expert in certain areas of human biology, though she had no intention of sharing that in class. She woke up to the sound of the alarm clock beside her bed, blinking her eyes open, still groggy. It was an old model GE alarm clock, a relic from the 1990s on Earth. Apparently there was a trend now, a classics renaissance, bringing back old-fashioned tech across the globe, and she absolutely hated it. The clock made a loud, shrill noise when the set time arrived, instantly pulling her out of her sleep. It was one of the first things that puzzled her about humans. They didn't wake up naturally. Every other alien species she knew of had an internal alarm, a built-in mechanism that made sure they woke up exactly when they wanted to. Their internal clocks ran smoothly, like a finely tuned machine. Humans, however, had clocks that seemed more like a bicycle missing a wheel. "Ethan," Miss Thompson mumbled groggily, her face scrunching up as the clock rattled her skull with each shrill beep. It was almost impressive how, despite humans having such sensitive ears, they could sleep through alarms, car crashes, explosions, and possibly even entire wars. "Ethan," she whined, glancing at the human male beside her, clinging to her. Humans, bizarrely, loved sleeping in cold rooms, at least on average. No one knew exactly why, but aliens all preferred warmth. They liked cozy, warm spaces, yet humans would happily turn a room down to 62 degrees Fahrenheit, then curl up under a blanket. Ethan was no different. Even now he clung to her, as though trying to trap her in a bear hug. His leg was tossed over her thigh and one of his arms was wrapped around her ribcage. As a Zara, Miss Thompson needed heat to stay comfortable, and often felt cold in space stations because they were rarely warm enough. Ethan, however, couldn't sleep if the room was too warm, so instead they used a thick comforter, which humans called a duvet. Miss Thompson could stay warm under the blanket, but Ethan acted as her personal space heater. Humans generated so much body heat, it was probably why they preferred cold rooms to sleep in. Miss Thompson, like a heat sink, absorbed his warmth, which led to mornings spent untangling limbs. She often had to gently swat Ethan's hands away as they got too flirtatious. Every morning, she couldn't help but laugh when she had to free herself from the mess of tangled limbs. It was one of the strange things about humans. They could be aroused at any time of day. Almost every other sentient species required hours to wake up, feed, and get active before any romantic interest kicked in. But humans, they didn't even need to be awake for their motor to be running. Many scholars believe this was why humans had such a rapidly growing population. This strange trait had caused Miss Thompson problems more than once this week. She had to speed walk her way to class after getting up late, often needing a moment to refresh herself before facing her students. It wasn't her fault. She had a very strong will, even by Zara standards. But the problem was human pheromones. Humans were the most pheromone-laden in the morning, and it was such a common phenomenon that even they didn't notice it anymore. After so many years of evolution, it had become second nature. For other star citizens, this could be a bit of a shock. Some races, particularly those who evolved from prey animals, were instantly overwhelmed by the scent of a nearby predator. Others, evolved from predators themselves, experienced racing hearts and quickened thoughts, but for a completely different reason. It usually took star citizens about 5 months to adjust to being around a human mate. Male star citizens who spent time with female humans often found their mornings extremely uncomfortable. There was even a kind of code among them. When they called into work, they would say they needed an extra 5 to let their bosses know they needed time to calm down. Ethan was no different. In fact, he might have been even worse. He reached over and slapped the alarm clock to silence it, then buried his face in her shoulder, tightening his hold around her. "Morning, my little dragon queen," he muttered. Miss Thompson narrowed her eyes sleepily and placed her clawed hand on Ethan's forehead. "No, Ethan," she murmured. Ethan just chuckled and kissed her shoulder, then her neck. "No, Ethan," Miss Thompson giggled, using her height and strength to gently push back against his forehead, allowing herself to wriggle free from him in the bed. "I can't be late again." And you're the reason why I usually am." Ethan sighed from the bed, still half cocooned in blankets, then propped himself up on one hand, his blonde hair falling in messy ringlets around his face. "That's fine. Just means I get to watch you go." Miss Thompson glanced over her shoulder at him, her heart fluttering when she saw the soft morning light casting a glow on his pale skin. But a sharp click from the living room caught her attention. The coffee maker had started up, reminding her she had work to do. Without that, she might have been tempted to slip back into bed, caught by the little love predator. Speaking of coffee, humans were all addicted to caffeine. Slipping on a pair of jeans and a sweater, Miss Thompson inhaled deeply, savoring the comforting smell of roasted coffee beans. Human biology was interesting in its own right. They could consume a variety of poisons and stimulants, and it all just made them jittery with energy. Humans were known for their caffeine habits. Coffee in particular was one of their greatest stimulants. And it was likely one of the main reasons Earth was as wealthy as it was. No matter how hard they tried, coffee could only be grown on Earth, which baffled scientists and enraged them. Even the Nimi, usually adept at understanding complex biological issues, were perplexed by this stubborn little plant. The desire for coffee beans had propelled South American countries to power, putting them on par with the United States and the European coalition, and now the UAS was vying to bring them into their fold fields upon fields of coffee plants ran across what was called the Bean Belt, and Earth had a stranglehold on its production and market. Miss Thompson loved coffee, just like all Zara. The darker, the better. It always managed to wake her up, something the Ural and Carrion species couldn't quite handle. Though they enjoyed the taste, they could only manage a single cup of light roast without feeling jittery. For them, that single cup packed a stronger punch than it did for others. But if Zamra or Poe consumed too much, it led to severe gastrointestinal distress, sometimes even death. As Miss Thompson took a sip from her coffee-filled canister, she felt Ethan's strong arms wrap around her waist, resting on her broad hips, tugging her sweater. "Miss Thompson," he murmured, his voice thick with sleep. Miss Thompson snorted and swatted at his hands. "Stars above? How are you this active without even being fully awake?" She reached for a long stirring spoon, jabbing it into his toned stomach. "Back to the dungeon from which you came." The irony wasn't lost on Ethan, nor was it lost on her as they both chuckled. With a playful nudge, Miss Thompson guided Ethan into the bathroom for his shower. She managed to escape her lair of blankets with enough time to spare, fending off Ethan's attention. Arriving at her classroom well before the students, she started setting up for the day. She had to get creative, anticipating the kinds of questions her students would ask. But she steeled herself. She was halfway through setting up her slides when the first students trickled in, and the air shifted. Tension hung thick. They all sat down in silence, which, in her class, was practically unheard of. "Ah, you're all quiet today," Miss Thompson drawled, standing from her desk and smoothing out her jeans. She liked them. These ones were made of a special material called spandex. "I bet you've been looking forward to this, huh?" The only response was widening grins from her students, except for masked Jin, who gave her a cheerful thumbs up with one of their forearms. "Splendid," Miss Thompson muttered under her breath, tapping her thumb to her pad, which made the large display light up. On it appeared an image of human men and women of various skin colors playing volleyball. The cheer that erupted from the students was deafening, and everyone but Tinley and Ramira winced as the sharp jolt of pain hit them. Miss Thompson was focusing her will on her class. Tinley and Ramira, however, had been wise enough to stay silent. "That's enough," Miss Thompson stated firmly, her tail flicking angrily against the desk. "You will all show proper decorum, regardless of the subject." The class groaned, holding their heads and murmuring angrily to each other, but Miss Thompson stood tall in front of them all. "So all of you want to learn about the biology of humans," she began, her tone dry. "I'll teach you about it in a highly professional manner, so I expect professional questions from you as well." She gestured toward the screen. "Humans, as I've said before, evolved from a predator species, which gave them the muscular build you're familiar with in other predators, like the Zamra, Ural, and Carlin. Humans require movement and exercise to stay healthy. Without it, they gain weight and lose their form." Miss Thompson tapped her thumb again, switching to the next slide, which showed two extremely overweight humans slowly waddling along a park walkway. Like all races, humans are prone to weight gain if they consume too many calories and don't work them off. They also have a variety of body types, ranging from short to extremely tall. The next slide appeared, showing humans of many sizes. They can range from as short as 4-6 inches to over 7 feet tall. In UAS units, they can be taller or shorter, but this is often linked to certain diseases. A powder blue Ural female raised her hand, and Miss Thompson raised an eyebrow, waiting for her question. Miss Thompson leaned towards her fellow students, nodding as they spoke before bringing her hand down. "What is this human phenomenon?" she asked softly. "Ah, asthma," Miss Thompson whispered to herself, then took a controlled breath and returned to her teacher's voice. "This is a pheromone released by humans as they sleep. Humans themselves are not affected by it, or at least not as much as other races of the Confederation. This pheromone causes different reactions depending on the legacy of the race. Prey species react in fear when they smell this pheromone, and it's often compared to a musk. The Pyojin and Nimi have had the worst reactions to this pheromone," Miss Thompson continued. "They've either woken up in blind panic or fled the room, overwhelmed by it. The pheromone overrides their logical thinking and draws out something much more primal. It takes time for non-prey species to acclimate to the presence of a human." She tapped her fingers together, bringing up an image of a human snoozing in a hammock. "That being said, this pheromone can cause chaos even when humans are simply napping. I've seen it cause trouble on ships, especially when they're resting." A powder blue Ural raised her hand, tapping her claws together with curiosity. "What does it do to you, non-prey races?" Miss Thompson thought about zapping the Ural's brain for asking, but decided to keep her professional demeanor. For non-prey races, it's described as energizing. She had to take a few deep breaths, recalling how it made her feel, and felt her skin tingle slightly. It can make the heart race, the blood rush, and the brain come alive so quickly that it's even been known to snap a star citizen awake from deep sleep. It causes the stomach to flutter, the skin to sweat if it's strong enough, and for some, an unusual arousal can take over. There was an audible intake of breath as those from predator backgrounds inhaled with excitement, while those from prey backgrounds felt a surge of anxious energy. "Oh, good grief," Miss Thompson thought to herself, then moved on to her slides. Anyway, humans are extremely well-muscled, even with minimal effort. Due to their lack of fur, scales, or any other similar covering, their strength is evident in the many forms their bodies take. She changed the slide to show a male and female human in 3 body types: weak, middling, and peak. "First, we have the triangle human," Miss Thompson said, ignoring the low whistles and giggles from her students. "This is the most common body type among humans. They have very defined muscles and are the most balanced, with a mix of muscle, fat, and height." She changed the slide to show the oval human body type. The reaction in the class was immediate. Some students' eyes widened in fear, while others looked on with interest, some even smiling. Oval humans tend to store more fat, have more muscle, and are generally wider. These are quite common, and usually found in places where heavy lifting is required on a daily basis. Triangles and ovals are constantly at odds, often comparing who is stronger, who looks better, and so on. Miss Thompson continued. They are usually the slowest humans, excelling at short bursts of speed but struggling with longer distances due to their weight. She switched to the next slide showing rectangle humans. "Well, they look friendly," a male PO said, who had been taking notes the entire time. Miss Thompson smiled slightly. "Rectangle humans are athletic, possibly even more so than triangles. They struggle to build muscle or fat because of how their bodies are designed. They are lean, quick, and agile, and they dominate sports that don't require as much strength." She clicked to the next slide, showing how human muscles are incredibly dense. Human muscle is extremely dense, with tightly woven strands. The strength of it is still debated, but after witnessing certain events during the Darrier War, we still question much of what we know. She tapped her thumb again, bringing up a slightly blurred image of a human ripping a Darrier warrior in half. The class gasped as the image appeared, and Miss Thompson smoothed her sweater, her voice growing more serious. "Human strength is controlled by their brains, and we believe they do this to maintain their caloric needs. Unlike other species, humans only use up to 70% of their full muscle potential. Human women," she continued, "have been filmed lifting entire vehicles off their children using what's called hysterical strength. Warriors have been known to go berserk during battle, tearing their enemies apart or ripping limbs from Darrier warriors." Miss Thompson paused for effect. The Darrier aren't the only ones who felt the brunt of unchecked human strength. When humans engage in fight or flight mode and choose to fight, they can produce terrifying amounts of strength. Rogue races like the Dawai and Don have been found dismembered or crushed by humans during attempted robberies. Miss Thompson finished with, "Even now the Mandarines are shocked by humans in melee combat, and their strength when their adrenaline is pumping. After such displays of strength, the human body uses up an immense amount of energy and crashes. Humans have been found asleep on the battlefield, exhausted from pushing their bodies to the brink." The class sat in stunned silence, still processing the blurry image. Miss Thompson changed the slide to a lighter topic. On a more positive note, one thing all humans share is their ability to generate a substantial amount of body heat. Their bodies run so hot that most bacteria and viruses are cooked alive within them. This is also why many of us have to take injections regularly, Miss Thompson explained, and why the opticins need to ingest nanic scrubbers to ensure their bodies don't fall victim to Earth's pathogens. "Is that why we're constantly getting pumped with meds?" Jen asked shakily, raising two of her hands past her wolf-shaped mask. She had to steady herself after the earlier revelation. "I feel like I've had more injections on this station than in my entire life." Miss Thompson nodded. "It's a requirement, I'm afraid. Humans are remarkably resilient when it comes to infections, and they've bred some of the fiercest microbes to ever reach the stars. We've got a firm grasp on medical science, and it's the only reason why humans haven't released plagues onto other planets. It came close a few times, especially after the smallpox outbreak on this station. Thankfully, fatalities were low, thanks to the hard work of the medical professionals here. Many believe humans run hot to kill anything that tries to enter their bodies and stay hot to make sure they don't get sick," Miss Thompson added, tapping her thumb as the students murmured among themselves. She pulled up an image of a human woman sleeping in a hammock. "As mentioned before, humans release pheromones when they sleep, but they don't just sleep at night like most of us do. On their home planet, humans run hot all day long. Even with proper calories, they may feel the need to take what they call cat naps, a quick snooze to recharge their bodies and rest their brains. Curiously, no other race is able to nap like that. Even we Zra, when we sleep deeply and don't wake up until a full cycle is complete. The only creatures known to be able to nap are those on Earth. Small rodent-like creatures, a rodent from Ulan, for instance, cannot nap like one from Earth. Instead, it stays awake until it has a full sleep cycle. This has led some to theorize that this ability is key to human dominance on the battlefield. When tired, they can take a quick nap and be back on their feet within hours, whereas the Dimir had to complete full cycles and even tried to stay awake, knowing humans were resting and preparing to attack. This led to the Dimir being exhausted when the humans struck their lines. "Are you trying to say their superpower is micro-sleeping?" a male opticon asked, his brown feathered head tilted in confusion. "What does a nap feel like?" "You can find out if you intake some human pheromones," Miss Thompson said with a wink, and the class erupted in laughter. Gaffus, a female Karen, giggled, then held out her hands, palms up. "You can't be serious." "I'm quite serious," Miss Thompson said, smiling. "The only times other races have experienced a nap is when they're near a sleeping human. Of course, they have to deal with all the other feelings that arise, but if they master themselves, they can experience a short sleep cycle or a human nap." "If they love sleeping so much, why do they ingest so many stimulants?" the female Karen asked, resting her lizard-like head on her clawed hands. Miss Thompson tapped her palm until a slide appeared showing a human drinking coffee. Only she knew it was Ethan. "It's a fair question, and frankly, the only answer we have is that humans love ingesting stimulants, poisons, and minerals that make them feel different ways. We used to think the Naimi were the deviants among us, but humans put them to shame. Caffeine, sugar, nicotine, alcohol, cannabinoids, cocaine, opium, capsaicin. Humans ingest them all. They may want to flavor their food, feel more alert, disassociate, or just sit on the couch and eat junk food. Humans are some of the most prolific junkies currently cruising the stars, and their bodies are so robust that they can even ingest stimulants from other races without much trouble." Miss Thompson was about to list more of the most popular human stimulants when a raised hand caught her attention. She turned to see one of the students. "Yes, what is it?" "I just got an alert," the female point said, running the pad of her finger along the tabletop. "There's going to be a station emergency drill in about 20 minutes, and those always take forever. Do we have to end class early? You know what we're going to ask." Miss Thompson tried to play dumb, raising her scaled eyebrows and tilting her head. "Rumors about their mating rituals? a male Yorel asked, cutting to the chase. The lengths they go to, how it's affected the Confederation, how it made the Zra angry, and why the Yal are taking human mates. Yes, all right, Miss Thompson said, holding up her hands with a flare of her head fronds. I know what you're asking. However, before I pull up the slides, all of you will be on your best behavior. Got it? A chorus of silent nodding heads replied to her, and she queued up the slides. One showed a rather buxom female human wearing lingerie, while the other showed a strapping male human in only shorts. Both of them gave the class an eye, the kind humans were already well known for. The class was very quiet, though they were reacting in their own ways. The fur of the Appel floofed out significantly, and the hoods of the Carlin came forward in an embarrassed manner to shield their faces. The Point all blushed, freckles appearing on their skin. The Opticans were the most pronounced, their feathers puffing out in embarrassment, while the Jinn remained calm and cool, though their fingers fidgeted with their masks. Humans are predators, Miss Thompson continued, and they like to hunt in all manners. When not in combat, humans become predators of affection. Their bodies change, but it's subtle for the most part. All of us are so advanced that we are quite cordial with each other and openly display our affections with words. Humans, however, are quite behind us in this regard. This is a different kind of war, Miss Thompson began, her voice steady despite the discomfort she felt discussing it. One that could be called biological warfare. She hated how she got when talking about this subject, but unfortunately, it always made her think of Ethan. Humans bring out the worst in us and sadly, the Zura the most. She paused, gathering her thoughts. A common saying among humans is, all is fair in love and war, and they are just as skilled in one as they are in the other. Miss Thompson adjusted the slides, letting them rotate slowly, showing 50 different aspects of human courtship. Humans, it seems, operate on a biological level, exploiting natural responses to touch, taste, sight, and even hearing. The Zura, unfortunately, fall prey to touch and body language, which has caused frustration among Zura leadership for reasons we all know. There's also a new issue with male and female Zura attempting to smuggle themselves to Earth, but that's outside the scope of today's lesson. The most obvious trigger is sight. Humans can initiate emotional combat using nothing but body language. They narrow their eyes, smile, grin, and have an incredible control over their eyelids and eyebrows. Scholars from the Confederation believe that half of human language is silent, communicated only through their eyebrows and eyelids. There are also their fingers, Miss Thompson continued, struggling to keep her smile at bay. Humans initiate touch in ways that none of us can truly understand, having abandoned that kind of communication centuries ago. A gentle touch on the shoulder, a finger to the chin, a soft brush of the hip. Hundreds of star citizens have fallen victim to human touch. Somehow, humans know exactly how to touch, caress, stroke, or brush us in a way that draws out a reaction. How they know this remains a mystery, but it seems to be instinctive, like they can sense us at a feral level and understand how to get the response they want. A few scholars believe that human skin is biologically weaponized. Their skin is unique with ridges, and many consider it to be a weapon in itself. The Yal, Zra, Carlin, and Opticin are the races most affected by this. It's become such an issue that humans are not allowed to touch these races while on certain stations. There's an actual fear that they might unintentionally seduce a star citizen just through touch. Even simple things like handshakes or eye contact have caused officials to become soft-hearted during negotiations. Miss Thompson paused, then went on. Humans also engage in psychological warfare when it comes to affection. They buy small, meaningful gifts and embrace each other, wrapping their arms around someone and clasping hands. These gestures can be dangerous for a number of reasons. Once they've got you, it's difficult to escape. Try getting away from a human who has their arms around you, and you'll find it nearly impossible. She stifled a giggle, remembering her own experiences that morning. Hugs have specific meanings. A simple hug from the front at a slight angle is a greeting between friends. But if the hug moves horizontally, around the waist or neck, that indicates the human likes you more than a friend and has likely marked you as prey. A side hug around the shoulders is a friendly gesture. But if it slides further south, you are also marked. The most dangerous hug is from behind. No matter where those arms go, it signals a deeper affection, one that's more carnal in nature. These types of hugs are typically only given to those the human considers a mate. As her students scribbled furiously, Miss Thompson continued, "Remember, these hugs also work on humans. If you hug a human around the neck or waist from the front, you are signaling that you see them as a potential mate. If they are interested, they will reciprocate in kind. This can get awkward if they aren't interested, but humans are skilled at making their feelings known in a gentle manner. The most dangerous hug, though, is the one from behind. If you haven't built up that level of trust and affection, hugging a human from behind is akin to hugging an earth bear from behind. You stand a good chance of being mauled. Jen, unable to resist, raised her hand and asked, "What about kissing? The thing with their lips?" Miss Thompson let a smile appear as she nodded. "Ah, yes," she said, unable to suppress her amusement. Kissing is an entirely human phenomenon, though it could also be seen as a Nemi one after some instruction from human smugglers. Yoral might nuzzle their cheeks together, and the point might touch their brows with someone they love. But humans kiss. A slide appeared showing a male and female human kissing, and Miss Thompson gestured toward it. Kissing involves pressing the lips to someone's body, and it is considered the third human language. A kiss on the cheek is a sign of friendship, while a kiss on the forehead expresses care. But the rest of the body has an entire manual dedicated to it. She pointed to her own lips. "A kiss here," she said, "means only one thing, that a human likes you. You need to be cautious when dealing with humans because just like their fingers, their lips are also biological weapons. There have been visible physiological reactions to a human kiss, even on monitoring devices. Some scholars believe humans use something called pathokinesis when they kiss, able to calm you, excite you, seduce you, or even make you fight harder than you ever thought possible. The most common type of kiss is a loving kiss, a way for humans to show affection. But despite what you might think, there's also a timer involved." "A timer?" a male PO exclaimed, his face incredulous. "This is a whole other language, and there's a timer?" Miss Thompson laughed. "Yes, a timer. A quick kiss, as they call it, has no further connotations. It's just a simple display. But if you linger more than a second, you begin unlocking. As the human pathokinesis begins to take effect, if either you or the human lingers, they will tilt their head to the left or right, as if unlocking a key, and the lips will combine. At this point, you're moving past locks and entering a form of combat," Miss Thompson explained. "If either party pulls away now, it can be seen as flirtatious and teasing. However, if the lips stay together, the human will rotate their head again, pushing past a third lock. They might hug you, wrap their arms around you, and at times even press their tongue into your mouth." "Ew!" a male opticon sputtered, feathers bristling in distaste. "Don't knock it until you try it," Miss Thompson thought to herself, but continued. "In this moment, you are now considered to be in the opening stages of a coupling. Should one of you pull away at this point, the human will likely become angry or irritated. This is partly because you've shown dominance over the human or another human, trying to control the situation. I'm not joking when I say human courtship and coupling is like combat to them. There's dominance, submission, and tally-keeping involved." "I suppose they could also be angry because it's kind of a buzzkill," Tintle said, having rested her chin on her arms and watching Miss Thompson with great interest. "You get the engines all fueled up for nothing, just like ships hate that." A male Carleen spoke up next. "Is it true about the wrestling?" A murmur of giggles and chuckles filled the room. "Human coupling is vigorous," Miss Thompson said coolly, though her heart pounded in her chest. "As you all know, the Confederation races and other spacefaring species treat mating as a polite requirement for reproduction. Sometimes it's even faceless, just a deposit of genetic material. The Shash Shoutring have left physical mating behind, growing their young in great nurseries. Humans, however, do not believe in this. Their mating is as fierce as their prowess in combat, and they judge each other during it as well. Should a partner be lazy or lackluster, they are passed over. Scholars have noted that entire marriages have fallen apart because one human became complacent, and the other went off in search of a better partner," Miss Thompson continued. "Now, before any of you ask, no, I will not be showing you aspects of human mating on the display. We will only discuss it." A collective groan of annoyance filled the room, quickly silenced by a sharp look from Miss Thompson as she poised her fronds. "Humans, as I said," she began again, keeping her fronds pointed firmly at her class, "bite, claw, and muscle each other during mating. It can range from being feral, salacious, or intimate. Some scholars have called it horrifyingly violent, while others view it as charming and pure. However, death is a common occurrence in human mating. There's a warning for you all," Miss Thompson added, voice serious. Humans, both male and female, have accidentally broken or killed other races who tried coupling with them. I cannot stress enough how heavy and strong humans are. They can accidentally kill you, even during mating if you're not careful. Not to mention, she continued, none of us have any defenses against the diseases humans can pass through mating. Hundreds of star citizens have died quickly from syphilis, for example, with a PO succumbing to it within 3 days of infection. If left untreated, humans can survive it for up to 20 years. She paused, allowing her words to sink in. If you still doubt the ruggedness of humans, they've been recorded catching both Thaxway and the wandering flesh. How long did they take to die? A female opticon asked. They didn't, Miss Thompson said flatly. Their bodies processed the disease and spat it back out with no ill effects. Now let's circle back to their musculature. I think you'll find some things about their hand bones and elbows quite curious, such as their ability to use them as crushing weapons when necessary. Lara stood outside Specialist Harris's living quarters, checking and double-checking the regulations. As long as both parties were within 3 ranks of each other, they could mingle without needing any additional paperwork. She also checked her mustard yellow fur and uniform before glancing at the small bag she was holding. She had heard human women liked sweet things, so she had grabbed some snacks and drinks from the commissary. The plan was simple. During their movie night, they would hang out, eat snacks, talk, and then part ways afterward. Lara had already done this with Corporal Graves, the male human, and he had been pleased when he opened the sliding hatch door and saw her standing there with a cooler of beer. It had been fun. They shared laughs during the movie, but now Lara wanted to see if both male and female humans behaved the same after hours. She pressed the hailing button and stepped back, tilting her head as she thought. Male humans weren't bad, but they weren't as pretty as the females. Female humans had more fun with their hair and more pleasing features. She just didn't understand what the other female Ural saw in male humans. The door slid open with a hiss, and Specialist Harris was standing there, smiling, dressed in jogging shorts and a white tank top that did little to conceal her tan skin and well-muscled limbs. "You came over in your uniform?" Harris teased, stepping aside to let Lara in. "We're off rotation for the next 4 weeks unless there's an emergency, you know." "Specialist Harris," Lara said, her heart racing faster than usual. Harris gave her an odd look, and Lara could feel her tail wagging behind her. "All right," Harris said with a laugh. "Is it a warm movie?" She closed the hatch behind Lara, smiling.